Hello and welcome to another tutorial on React. This is our third tutorial, and so what I've done to get started, I've gone into git bash, which you should also do. I've entered desktop then projects. I had already made a React 3 folder in projects, but if you haven't, go ahead and mkdir whatever name you want to call it, and it will make a folder, and then just click on npm start and open up your WebStorm. Now inside of here, for my React 3 folder, I've made another folder which is called components. Inside I have another folder which is called image processor. It has 3 images, an index.js and a style CSS, which we will use later on in this tutorial. And we also have our app.js right here. And so what I've done right here, first of all, to start off, through const I've made images. Inside I've made an object array for my 3 images. So we have the ID, URL and its description, and so we have them for 3 different paintings, and we have 3 arrays. And if we want to check, there's still nothing in React, as we haven't exactly done anything. We've just made an object array. Now we need to give it all its props and functions and all of that. So to actually display our object array in render, we're going to make a const with info, and so this will equal images.map. So basically we're doing the same thing as last time. We're making sure that all 3 of them can be seen, and then in return we're making a show image. I won't call it a tag as this is an HTML. We're making a show image which looks a little like HTML code. We have the address, which is going to be our item URL, which is this one right here, so this URL, and then we have our description, which will equal item description. So this is how we're going to get our object array to be displayed. And lastly, what we need to do is we need to put this info, so we need to get it displayed instead of this right here. So this was just, you know, the logo and all of that. We get rid of it. We also get rid of this. We just delete it. We put in curly braces. Inside we're gonna put info. So now what we're gonna see is we have an error. What it says is that our show image is not defined. That is actually true. We just randomly put a show image right here. We haven't defined it anywhere, which we need to do. As we got rid of our text from our return and we changed it with info, we can get rid of the logo text as well, so the import logo from logo svg. And what we need to do is we need to create our show image component, which is why I have my components folder made. So as I said in the beginning, you're gonna make in your components folder image processor folder. Inside you're gonna have an index.js and a style.css. so what you do is you just right click and then you make new, and then whatever kind of file you need, in this case a JS and a CSS file. Now you're gonna open up index.js. Inside we're gonna put our import React component from React. We're gonna make our class show image component extends component. Open the curly braces, and we also need our export default show image. Inside we'll make a render, so go ahead, type in render, and then inside of that we need our return, and in return we need our main container, so the parent div, which we've talked about. And we need to write our info that we got from our props, so const image URL equals, inside we need to put our this props address, as that is the URL, and then let's duplicate it. Let's change this to image description, And we also need to change this to description as well. Here we are. And I made a slight mistake. This return should not be here. Alright, here we are. This is right. And let's get rid of it. And obviously we can also put our image URL, so let's also try this as well. Let's go to React, and here we have our image URLs. So basically we've made our map function, which calls in our item variable one of our arrays, in this case this very first one right here, and it calls for our first object, our show image, or let's say it sort of transfers it to show image, which is two values, which is URL and description, which we have set right here. So this is basically our address and description through props. And when we made our show image, the only job that this component has is to basically display our image URL or image description. And in our image URL, from our props is our address. Then the same map sort of circles around our second object, which is this, and shows or displays our second object's details. So the Last Supper, Da Vinci, if we've wanted to display description, if it's URL we get O2 JPEG, and then same thing for our third object, and the result is all three being displayed. So map basically does the same thing for as many objects that you have. So we have 3 in this case, we get it 3 times, which means we get our perfect result. Now all that is left for us to do is to get our images to be actually shown, because all we essentially have right now are just the URL address and the description for the image. Let's actually get them to be shown on our page. And what we need to do is basically we need to still have our image URL, and we just need to add in our img src, which you should know from HTML. And when we write our img src, we see that we do have images, however they're not our actual images, they're just sort of when you get an error for an image, so it won't work. It says that there is an image here, but it can't actually be shown. This is because we have a couple of errors. To begin with getting rid of our errors, let's just start off with making our code a little bit simpler. If instead of our image URL we put our variable name, which is address, so let's copy this, put it instead of image URL, and we do the same thing for our image description, we can get the same exact code by essentially just writing our const, and then in brackets we're gonna write our address and description, and we need to use curly brackets by the way, and we're gonna write equals this dot props, and we can get rid of this old code right here. And for example, instead of writing image URL, we write address. If we go to React, we'll get the same exact thing. So this was just an easier way of writing some complex code, and it will just make our job so much simpler. Now if we look at our React page, we're gonna see that all 3 of our pictures are here. Now let's go ahead and add in some CSS code. First of all, as we know, we need to put our class name, and let's just call it image. We need to also import our styles CSS, and in styles CSS we're just gonna give our image some properties. We don't need height, let's just leave it with width, 20 VW, and float left. And we forgot the dot slash. Let's also add our class name image to the actual image, just so it has a size. And let's check it out, and here we are. We have 3 of our images right next to each other with the size of 20 viewport width. Now let's make a div for all of our properties. Let's close this div as well, and then let's make another div in which we'll put our description, which we need to put in curly braces like this. And now if we come here, we'll get both the pictures and their descriptions. Now let's talk about working with a lightbox. You should be familiar with what a lightbox is. It's when you basically click on something and it just enlarges and has a shadow. So let's try and do that for our images. And for that we're going to go to github.com front-end collective React image lightbox, which is an already pre-prepared library. What we need to do is we need to npm install React image lightbox. So we're going to go to git bash, we're going to go into our file, and through npmi we're going to write React image lightbox, and don't forget save dev. And now all we need to do is we need to insert our code for lightbox, and we'll be set. Go ahead and copy this, and we need to paste it right here as we're using our lightbox. We need to also add constructor with props. Inside we're gonna put super and props again. Now what we need to do is we need to initialize the state, and instead of these, let's put open variable. Let's make it is open is false. In our render we need to make a const. Let's put is inside, let's put is open, and it will equal this state, just like so. Afterwards, in our main or container div, now we're gonna use ECMAScript again to put in something here, is open, and 2 ampersands. We're checking if they're open, it exists, or is open. In that case, we'll get our lightbox to work. So it will make our lightbox component work. The 2 ampersand symbols basically mean if it's open or if it's true. Is open, I mean that the variable is open. In our lightbox, we're going to put main source, which will be our address, and we also have some required things that we need to have. So one of them was main source, and the next one is on close request. As you see, it says required. So we're gonna go ahead and copy this, and let's try to understand what this is actually for. We need this to set our state's value to is open. And for our images, let's go ahead and add in a on click. And for our on click, Inside we'll put brackets, an equal sign, a angled bracket which is sort of an arrow, and we'll put our this set state. We put normal brackets, we put curly braces, we put normal brackets, we put curly braces, we write is open, and we'll make it true. And the one last thing that you need to import is this right here for our style CSS. And when you have that done as well, let's go to our React and try this out. And here we are. As you see, we have our lightbox and it works perfectly fine. And so that was all that I had prepared for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching.